It's midnight sharp and you're watching World News program with me, Madam Zian. To the headlines. Palestinian military operation kills 2 Zionist soldiers and injures several others near Tubas, northern West Bank. Hamas says it's a message that occupation crimes won't go unpunished. While Jenin Governorate reports 38 Palestinians martyred since the beginning of the Israeli aggression. And UNRWA warns of catastrophic situation in Jenin refugee camp. Next, Algeria and Bangladesh discuss strengthening bilateral relations in energy, agriculture, higher education, and trade at second political consultations. Also coming up, in the conflict-torn Democratic Republic of the Congo, the M23 movement declares unilateral ceasefire for humanitarian reasons. Kenyan presidency announces upcoming summit between Tshisekedi and Kagame in Tanzania to address escalation, while Kinshasa requests urgent UN Human Rights Council session on Goma. And U.S.-China tariff war intensifies as new U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports take effect. China responds with counter tariffs, pushing global financial markets to the brink of the abyss. And Washington suspends tariffs on Canada for 30 days. Hello and welcome back. We begin with the latest developments in Palestine. 2 Israelis were killed and others wounded among the occupation forces on Tuesday morning in a shooting attack at the Taysir checkpoint near the Tubas in occupied West Bank. The attacker was killed during the occupation, and according to local Palestinian sources, a Palestinian carried out a heroic attack targeting Israeli forces at the Taysir checkpoint near Tubas, resulting in the deaths of 2 occupation soldiers and the injury of 6 others. This comes amid the ongoing Israeli aggression against villages, towns, and refugee camps in the West Bank, which has led to the deaths of more than 20 Palestinians. The Hamas movement praised the heroic Taysir operation on Tuesday, stressing that Israel's crimes and aggression in the northern occupied West Bank will not go unpunished. In a statement, Hamas said that this heroic attack reaffirms the determination of Palestinian youth in the West Bank to continue on the path of resistance and confrontation against Israeli aggression.
The ongoing crimes of occupation against our Palestinian people in the West Bank, especially in Jenin and Tul Karm, will not weaken their resolve or resistance. The heroic operation highlights the steadfastness of the youth and resistance in continuing to fight against the fascist Zionist occupation. The enemy's efforts to subdue our people or displace them will be crushed by our determination and bravery. We call on our people to intensify their resistance, confront the occupation's army, and defend our land and holy sites.
The Palestinian Resistance Committees on Tuesday called on the Palestinian people to escalate resistance and target occupation forces and settlers everywhere in the occupied territories. In a statement, the group's media office praised the heroic Taysir checkpoint operation in Tubas, describing it as a legitimate response to the crimes committed by the occupation and its settlers against Palestinians. It also called the attack a new blow to Israel's security and military establishment.
We congratulate the heroic operation at the Taysir checkpoint in northern West Bank, viewing it as a legitimate response to the Zionist enemy's crimes against the people of Jenin and all of Palestine. This operation strikes a blow to the Zionist security and military apparatus, sending a message that there will be no security or stability for them as long as their aggression continues. The Taysir operation reaffirms that the resistance is steadfast and deeply rooted, and its flag will remain alight until the removal of the occupying entity.
The Jenin Governorate announced on Tuesday that 38 Palestinians from the governorate and its refugee camp have been killed since the beginning of the aggression. In a statement, the governorate said that the Zionist army has forced about 3,420 families in the camp to flee. It also reported that Israeli forces continue to demolish homes in the camp using drones. The governorate expressed concerns that there may be more dead and wounded inside the camp, warning that Israel is imposing a new reality on cities and refugee camps in the West Bank, similar to Gaza, aiming to seize more land. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees warned on Tuesday that Jenin refugee camp in northern occupied West Bank is facing a catastrophic situation due to the destruction of numerous homes and buildings caused by ongoing Zionist military operations. UNRWA spokesperson Juliette Touma told journalists in Geneva that large parts of the camp's buildings have been completely destroyed in a series of explosions carried out by Israeli forces.
Large parts of the camp were completely destroyed in a series of detonations by the Israeli forces. It is estimated that 100 houses were destroyed or heavily damaged. The residents of this particular camp have endured the impossible. All residents of the camp, according to our reports, have left the camp as of this morning.
And the Commission Against the Wall and Settlements reported that Israeli forces and settlers carried out more than 2,161 attacks in the occupied West Bank during the past month of January. The Commission's chairman, Minister Mouyad Shaban, stated in a monthly report on Israeli violations in colonial expansion that Israeli forces were responsible for 1,786 attacks, while settlers carried out 375. And in Gaza, a region devastated by conflict, the daily struggle for survival has intensified. With widespread destruction of infrastructure, residents face critical shortages of water and electricity, forcing them to seek alternative solutions. Nabil Khazini has more.
Gaza is beginning the slow process of clearing its streets. Machines push debris aside, but the damage is clear. Palestinians returning to Gaza City are facing a harsh reality. Many report having little to no supplies of resources to care for their families. The situation is dire, especially in the north of the Gaza Strip, where the damage is extensive.
If it wasn't Allah's mercy, then the help of the agency that distributes aid, we have received nothing. But this is aid. Thank Allah. Lord of the two worlds, we ask for more aid, especially essential supplies. We need plates, pots, bedding, blankets. We want flour because the amount we have is very little. Until now, I haven't received any flour, and I don't have any at home. We want everything from aid. We need everything.
Gaza is facing a crippling water and energy crisis, with the damage to infrastructure widespread. Residents have been forced to turn to limited alternatives. In the absence of reliable electricity, many families are turning to solar power.
Anyone who has a tent in these conditions and lacks lighting is eventually forced to repair their alternative battery. We help people repair batteries because new ones are not available in the market. And since new batteries are not being allowed in, we are forced to restore the old ones.
Despite the overwhelming challenges, the people of Gaza continue to show remarkable resilience, finding strength in their resourcefulness and unwavering determination to rebuild, even in the face of the hardest circumstances.
The Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that the absence of international deterrent measures encourages Israel to escalate its crimes in the occupied West Bank. In a statement on Tuesday, the ministry condemned the crimes committed by Israeli forces against civilians, their properties and infrastructure in refugee camps and villages across the northern West Bank, particularly in Jenin, Tulkarem, Tubas, Al-Fari'a and Tamun.
We strongly condemn the crimes committed by the occupation forces against civilians, their properties and infrastructure in the refugee camps and villages of the northern occupied West Bank, particularly in Jenin, Tulkaram, Tubas, Al-Fara, and Tamoud. We denounce the crime of forced displacement and the coercion of citizens to flee their homes at gunpoint, along with its consequences of forcibly altering Palestinian geography. These crimes constitute a blatant violation of international law, international humanitarian law, and the Geneva Conventions. They reflect an official Israeli policy aimed at further tightening control over the lives of Palestinian citizens.
The United Nations expressed concern that Israel's methods in West Bank villages, towns, and refugee camps raise fears of lawlessness. In a statement on Tuesday, the UN said that Israel's operations in Jenin and Tulkarem have now expanded to include Tubas, signaling that the region will witness more death and destruction. It also highlighted that Israeli forces are employing lethal warfare tactics in the West Bank. And the United Nations announced that more than 545,000 Palestinians have moved from southern Gaza to the north since the ceasefire began. UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric told reporters that over 36,000 people have moved in the opposite direction during the same period. Dujarric added that 3 temporary shelter sites have been set up in northern Gaza, in Beit Hanun, Beit Lahia, and Jabalia, each accommodating around 5,000 people. He noted that while 1/3 of families now have better access of food, consumption levels remain far below pre-war conditions. He emphasized that lack of cash remains the biggest challenge for families. The Hamas movement accused Israel of stalling in implementing the humanitarian aspects of the ceasefire agreement by deliberately delaying and obstructing the entry of essential supplies, particularly tents, prefabricated homes, fuel, and heavy equipment to remove debris. Hamas spokesperson Hazem Qasem stated that the Israeli assault on Gaza has caused massive destruction, especially in the northern part of the Strip, where all aspects of life have been systematically wiped out, including near total destruction of homes, hospitals, and infrastructure. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency confirmed that more than 220 of its staff members have been killed in Gaza. In a statement on Tuesday, the agency said that 2/3 of its facilities have been bombed, including those used as shelters for displaced people. It also noted that 20 of its employees are currently detained in Israeli occupation detention centers. And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stated that Washington has consistently been an obstacle to ceasefire efforts in Gaza, and decisions made regarding it. In a press statement on Tuesday, Lavrov accused Israel of violating the second phase of the ceasefire agreement, adding that the occupation has no shame in conducting military operations in the West Bank. He further claimed that Israel aims to maintain its presence in the Golan Heights and parts of Lebanon.
Good thing that a ceasefire was finally reached after more than a year of the Security Council's attempts to call for one. The Americans blocked all of them, using their veto power on 6 occasions. Then they came up with a resolution of their own, which was presented as a solution to all issues.
Lebanon's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Immigrants, through its permanent mission to the UN, has filed a complaint with the UN Security Council regarding Israel's violations of Resolution 1701 and the declaration of cessation of hostilities. In a statement, the ministry confirmed that complaint detailed Israel's ongoing breaches since the ceasefire took effect on November 27, 2024. The complaint highlighted continued ground and air assaults, destruction of homes and residential areas, as well as severe violations, including the abduction of Lebanese civilians and soldiers. And Hezbollah strongly condemned Australia's decisions to impose sanctions on its Deputy Secretary General, Sheikh Naim Qasim. In a statement on Tuesday, Hezbollah said that the decision lacks any legal or moral basis, describing it as a clear alignment with Israel and an attempt to cover up its aggression. The group stressed that people worldwide have witnessed the massacres and war crimes committed by Israel against innocent civilians in Gaza and Lebanon. Israeli occupation forces have advanced to the town of Al-Malaqa in the countryside of Qunaytira, southwestern Syria, according to Syrian media. The report stated that Israeli forces searched residents' homes while a UN delegation arrived at the governorate's building to inspect it following a recent Israeli withdrawal. Israeli forces had occupied the courthouse and governorate building in Qunaytira for over 40 days before setting it on fire. They also continued leveling land in the areas where they had advanced. And the death toll from a car bombing in the city of Mabnij in northern Syria's Aleppo countryside has risen to 20, according to the Syrian news agency on Tuesday. The agency, citing Syrian civil defense, described the incident as a horrific massacre. An Algerian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, met with the Secretary General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, Mohammed Jassim Uddin, to review the state of fraternal relations and cooperation between Algeria and Bangladesh. A statement from the Algerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs explained that both sides discussed ways to advance bilateral relations to broaden horizons, particularly in economic fields. And the same sources added that the two officials also exchanged views on several issues of mutual interest and reaffirmed the need to continue reciprocal support in international forums. Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune extended his condolences to the family of former Prime Minister Sid Ahmed Ghazali. In his message of condolence, President Tebboune stated that Algeria had lost one of its distinguished figures who served the nation in high-ranking positions. He emphasized that the late Ghazali was among the country's elite intellectuals and skilled officials.
It was the will of the Almighty to call the late Sid Ahmed Ghazali to his mercy. With his death, Algeria loses one of the distinguished figures who served the country from high-ranking positions within state institutions. He left his fingerprints as an active national figure who witnessed and contributed to a decisive period marked by significant transformations and events in the national life. With deep sorrow and grief, we bid farewell to one of the nation's most competent and intellectual leaders who held high-ranking positions as an ambassador, minister, and head of government, making valuable contributions on the national political landscape. This moment of profound loss, I extend my heartfelt condolences and sincere sympathy to you, praying to the Almighty to grant you patience and forbearance and to bless the deceased with His vast mercy.
And the Algerian Army magazine Al Jaish reaffirmed Algeria's commitment to fostering unity and stability in Africa, emphasizing its role as a key player in the continent's integration. The magazine editorial stated that Algeria considers its African heritage and regional influence as fundamental to its mission. It stressed that Algeria is dedicated to helping Africa achieve full sovereignty over its lands and resources, ensuring its independent decision-making.
Algeria, a key player in African integration and stability, remains committed to uniting the continent. With deep African roots and regional influence, it works tirelessly to help Africa assert sovereignty over its lands, resources, and decision-making, aiming to overcome the colonial legacy that has shaped its struggles. Algeria emphasizes the need for solidarity and comprehensive development, believing the continent has the resources to achieve growth, progress, and prosperity.
The Algerian Army's magazine reaffirmed Algeria's commitment to promoting African solutions for African problems and highlighted Algeria's efforts to enhance security cooperation across the continent.
Amid growing regional and global crises threatening the continent's stability, Algeria reaffirms its call for African solutions to African problems, rejecting foreign interference and power rivalries, recognizing that development depends on security. Algeria, through the National People's Army, is strengthening security cooperation to help maintain peace and stability in an increasingly volatile region.
Tensions persist in the DRC as Kinshasa stays silent on the M23 unilateral ceasefire, while global calls for urgent action and dialogue grow. Hussam Barkan has more details.
After the capture of Goma, with a report of several hundred deaths, the M23 rebel group announced a unilateral ceasefire taking effect on Tuesday in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. The clashes have forced hundreds of thousands of people to flee their homes. In Bukavu, residents shared their opinions on this announcement.
Today, such a declaration once again reveals military strategies. While they say they do not intend to take the city of Bukavu, it is a tactic for them to consolidate their position in other areas. At the same time, they are advancing to take control of Bukavu. We urge the authorities not to rely on statements, but to remain vigilant and take action to neutralize the enemies of the Republic.
Even though M23 has declared a unilateral ceasefire, it claims humanitarian reasons for doing so. Whether this is a diversionary tactic or an attempt to initiate dialogue, the first effect would be the preservation of human lives. The Congolese population remains skeptical about M23's true intentions.
I can say that the ceasefire is good. It can help the Congolese armed forces reorganize effectively, but they must not let their guard down, as during the ceasefire, the M23 could use the opportunity to maneuver through the hills and launch another attack on the FARDC.
The situation remains tense across the country, with no official response from Kinshasa. Observers urge stronger action from Congolese authorities to prevent further violence. The international community calls for urgent, coordinated efforts, while Algeria advocates for restraint and dialogue to restore peace.
The trade war between the world's two biggest economies has escalated after China hit back against the introduction of tariffs by the U.S. with measures on its own. Marwa Belhewar has more details to tell you.
A U.S. levy of 10% on Chinese imports escalated the U.S.-China trade war as U.S. President Donald Trump once again imposed tariffs on Chinese trade. China wasted no time in responding by announcing new taxes and export controls on U.S. goods. Beijing's retaliatory tariffs introduced a 15% levy on U.S. coal and liquefied natural gas and 10% tariffs on the import of American crude oil, agricultural machinery, large displacement cars, and pickup trucks. China and the US were already engaged in a trade war in 2018, with Trump repeatedly raising tariffs on Chinese goods and China retaliating, disrupting global supply chains and hurting the world economy.
It's like you punch me and I punch you back. If it goes back and forth like this, things may develop into serious consequences with the escalation of confrontations.
Experts warn that this latest escalation will significantly impact global supply chains.
If you look at the magnitude, China is probably trying to engineer a similar cost of around 10% of tariff that US has put on China, but it's just China decide that it's going to take a more targeted approach to minimize a certain supply chain disruption that
Concerns are growing globally, especially as the Trump administration remains determined to impose strict tariffs on European countries, Canada and Mexico.
The ongoing US and China trade dispute has shaken financial markets. Oil prices fell and US stock futures dropped and Bitcoin remained a hedge. Meanwhile, the dollar surged and Hong Kong stock market pulled back from its recent 2-month high as the trade tensions between the world's largest economies worsened. Still within the same context and the trade war, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced that the U.S. has suspended tariffs on Canadian goods for 30 days following a deal with President Trump. In exchange, Canada pledged measures to combat drug trafficking and enhance border security, including the deployment of 10,000 military personnel. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap for tonight's program. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.